How's it going?
I think we're ready to go. Ready? Ready? Okay. Good evening. This is the March 4th, 2015 meeting of the Planning Board of the Town of Smithtown. We're going to begin it with the Pledge of Allegiance, and everyone's invited to join in. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin this evening's agenda, I would just like to take a moment to welcome our new board member, Mr. Thomas Unverzagt, who sits at the end on my left. He was recently appointed to the board to replace Adam Oshrin, who, as we know, resigned because he moved out of the area. Tom lives in Kings Park. It's my understanding he's in the home inspection business, so he'll probably be able to bring some practical business point of view regarding buildings and property to the board, and I'm delighted to welcome him here.
Thank you very much. I look forward to it. Thank you.
And with that, we can go on to the evening's agenda.
Welcome. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The first item on the agenda this evening, the Planning Department is recommending the following items for adjournment as we have insufficient information to act upon them. Under Part 1, Item 1, 2012-04 Storybook Homes. Item 2, 2012-02 Carlson Associates. Item 3, 2009-05 FB4 Realty. Item 4, 1156 Map of Open Meadow. Item 5, 773 Scholar Estates. Item 6, 1135 Tahami Plat. Item 7, 288 Olivia Estates. Item 8, 1120 Richards Homes. Item 9, 1039 Garden Gate. Item 10, 2010-06 KVC Holdings. Item 11, 911A Glen Hill Northern. And under new hearings, Part 2, Item 12, 1101 Flynn Plat, the applicant was scheduled to be heard tonight but has requested an adjournment.
All right, now I see he's requesting an adjournment to a specific date in his email, which is attached to the packet.
Yes.
All right, so what we'll do, we'll just do a motion first on items 1 through 11, and then we'll do a separate motion because his is going to be adjourned to a separate specific date. Sure. So on items number 1 through 11, first of all, is there anybody present who wishes to be heard on any of these items which the Planning Department is recommending be adjourned? Okay, with that, a motion please on items 1 through 11.
Mr. Chairman, motion to adjourn items 1 through 11 on the March 4, 2015 calendar as recommended by the department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? So adjourned. Then if we can please have a motion on item number 12, which is the matter of Flynn Plat, where we have an email sent in apparently by the applicant requesting an adjournment to the March 18th, 2015 meeting.
Mr. Chairman, motion to adjourn item 12, Flynn Plat, Kings Park, to March 18th at the request of the applicant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? So adjourned to March 18th, 2015.
Mr. Chairman, next, item 13 under other matters, I'm going to turn it over to David Flynn for a presentation on the comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Alex.
Before we do that, can we just have a motion to adopt the minutes of February 4th, 2015?
Mr. Chairman, motion to adopt the minutes of February 4, 2015.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? So adopted. Just wanted to clear the decks for you, Dave, so that
Thank you.
now the show is completely yours.
Oh, okay, sure, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight is what I hope is the second of 3 presentations to the Planning Board about the comprehensive plan update. Tonight is a presentation about all of the base studies that the Planning Department undertook to know the town and the trends and the context better in order to try to prepare a plan. I would just like to say that I'm going to go through this, I guess, kind of quickly, and I'd be grateful if the board would understand that this is only the tip of the iceberg. When you study the whole town and everything about the town and then condense it into a 20-minute presentation, you either have to talk very quickly or hit only the highlights. So this is, I think, just to give a flavor. So there are 6 base studies. The first one is the population base. Some things that that perhaps are just salient is the town's population is just under 120,000 people. That includes the 3 villages. It's just under 40,000 households. There are a little bit less than 3 people per household. The median age as of 2005 was 38.5. Now, amazingly, it's already up to about 43 or so. I believe in St. James and Kings Park, it's up to 46. So the town is aging. The median income in 2005, median household income was 101 or 102,000, and the median home value was 510,000. So that just gives you an idea of the scale of the town we're dealing with. Here's a graph that most of us seen. It shows the population of the town of Smithtown over time, and it starts in 1940 and ends in 2010 approximately. You can see that it was growing, and then it grew very rapidly in the 1940s and 50s and 60s. 60s was the steepest part of the curve. And then the total population's been pretty level ever since. What I couldn't find and what we should have done is the growth of households. The graph is different. The number of households continued to grow after 1970. So today the number of households is about a quarter more than it was in 1970.
So that would indicate that people today are having less children, right, than
Correct.
had back then, because you have many more households, but not that many more people.
Correct. The second base study we did was the natural resource base. Now, just for orientation, I'm sure all the planning board members know the map of the town very well, but this presentation will probably be replayed online and on the Smithtown Government TV. So just for those folks, on the top or the north side of the map is Long Island Sound. On the west is the town of Huntington. To the south is I'll use the mouse, is the town of Islip. To the east is the town of Brookhaven. So just from an orientation standpoint, the Smithtown community or hamlet is more or less in the center. In the northwest corner is the hamlet of Kings Park. Beyond that is a very large neighborhood, Fort Salonga, San Remo. To the southeast is the hamlet of Comac, which half is in the town of Huntington. And in between is an area that used to be called Indian Head, where the road is, but that used to be show up on maps as though it was a separate place. To the south, straddling in the town of Islip, is the hamlet of Hauppauge. In the southeast is the hamlet of Nesconset, and in part the Ronkonkoma post office is over in this area, and in the northeast is the hamlet of St. James. There are 3 villages, 3 incorporated villages in the town that the town does not have jurisdiction over with respect to land use, and that's the village of Head of the Harbor over here, the village of Nissaquag in here, and the village of the Branch here. This map shows topography. It's color-coded based on elevation above sea level. These areas are high points. There's a ridge over here that runs across Long Island. It's called the Harbor Hill Moraine. There's another ridge going through the middle of Long Island called the Ronkonkoma Moraine. And what you're seeing is this yellow is low near the shore, the brown is in the middle, the dark brown is high, and you can see that there are fingers going up into the brown area. Those are gullies, valleys, or channels made by the glaciers. They typically have steep sides and kind of flat bottoms. And then this area in here is kind of a somewhat low area, and if you're familiar with the groundwater flooding in the town of Smithtown, most of it's over in this area. There's a little over here too. So anyway, that's the topography. It ranges from sea level. Okay, it ranges from sea level to about 255 feet above sea level. We studied the geology, just some features that were either unusual, warranted some scientific note. The topography in terms of the slopes, the steep slopes are indicated in brown here. You can see that a lot of them are on the west side of town near the river. More level areas near the Sunken Meadow Parkway used to be farmland, and the same thing over in the St. James area over here. We studied hydrology, which is the study of drainage. Surficial or surface hydrology shows where the water flows. There's one area called a watershed here called the Nisququogue River watershed. Every drop of rain, if the land were impermeable, every drop of rain from here over to here would flow into the Nisququogue River. In reality, there's a lot of sand and coarse soils, and a lot of the water never makes it to the river itself. There's a watershed for Sunken Meadow Creek, one for part of Long Island Sound, one for Bread and Cheese Hollow, where the water follows Bread and Cheese Hollow Road north to Fresh Pond. Interestingly enough, right around, I think it's Town Line Road and Wood Park Elementary School, there's a high point, if you will, and then this water flows to the south shore. And the same thing over in St. James, all the way up near the Mills Pond House is where there's a high point, and the water all flows south, again to the south shore. This is just a cross-section showing the subsurface hydrology, the groundwater. The north, this is like a slice through the earth, where north is on the left and south is to the right. So this is the Atlantic Ocean over here. And this is Long Island Sound over here. This is the land. It goes up steeply at the bluffs, like near Callahan's Beach, and it goes up and down and all that sort of stuff. And then on the south half of the island, it's pretty level. As it goes, there's a little small river there. And then this is the Great South Bay, and this is Fire Island. Well, the groundwater itself is not underground streams, but it's really just sand and gravel where the voids are filled with water. And the top of that makes sort of a bubble, a level bubble above sea level. And all of the drinking water comes from this under our feet. And it goes down to a layer of clay about 200 feet thick, but way below sea level. And then below that is another 200 feet, and that's sand, and that's what they call the Raritan Formation. That's where the cleanest water on Long Island is. The stuff up near the top has been polluted by development over the past 50 or 60 years. Some places are pretty badly polluted, some are pretty clean, but down here, it's virtually all very clean. And this is the bedrock. The bedrock is roughly 700 feet below sea level near Fresh Pond and around 1,200 feet below sea level under Lake Ronkonkoma. We studied where wetlands are. This is the groundwater, the contours kind of like showing how high it is above sea level. Over here it's really close to sea level, as you might imagine, and then if you could see through the land and see what it looks like, it goes uphill toward where the Macy's is by Jericho Turnpike, or where the Costco, Home Depot, Kohl's over in this area, or the Smith Haven Mall over in this area. Those are high points of groundwater. And these triangles indicate which direction the water flows. And the water kind of flows the way it did on the surface, but in a much more vague or generalized way. This is the same thing, but from a regulatory standpoint. The dark blue, bluish gray over here is where the groundwater, where the recharge that hits the groundwater doesn't go into the deep aquifers. It goes horizontally toward the river or the sound. So any pollution here would pollute the river or the sound, but it won't most likely pollute the drinking water. Pollution over here will go more or less straight down before it goes horizontally, and that will typically contaminate the deep aquifers. So geographically, this is 25A, Indian Head Road, Old Willets Path, Old Northport Road, Old Plymouth Boulevard, Old Willets Path, and this is the bypass heading up toward the mall. I'll get coordinated on using the mouse. We studied flood-prone areas. The purple, hard to see with this projector, but the purple is subject to wave damage and inundation, rising water, but also damage from the dynamic action of waves. And then this color is where the land is subject to flooding only by inundation and not wave damage. This is a federal requirement, which is really not that important. These are areas that are flooded because of or not flooded, but could be flooded or sometimes flooded because of the groundwater rise. And you can see over in Hauppauge, this huge area over here, Lake Ronkonkoma, Nichols Road, Miller's Pond is here. So the federal government doesn't regulate that, but most of the homeowners in Smithtown who have had flooding problems have it due to groundwater. And then we also mapped an area over here that was flooded in 1978 when the Miller's Pond Dam broke, and that made the New Mill Pond Dam break, and then that made the Phillips Mill Pond Dam break. So there was a cascade effect in the winter of '78 where flooding occurred over here. But luckily, there were only about 3 houses in the way. We studied vegetation types for ecology. We studied wildlife habitats. We studied historic resources. This is also really only the tip of the iceberg. We studied visual quality to the best that we could. Visual quality is often subjective, but we did what we could to try to make it objective. This map shows assets, natural areas, good views, things like that. We also mapped the areas that are not assets, like the Old Northport Road area, Jericho Turnpike, the areas that people often say are not as nice as most of the residential development in town. Switching to the economic base, we did the human resource base, the natural resource base. Now we also studied the economic resource base. Geographically, where most of the employment is for basic industries are indicated in on this map. And by basic versus non-basic, for anybody not familiar with the terms, basic usually means money that, employment that brings wealth into an area. Non-basic usually means employment that redistributes the wealth in the area. So like when Grumman was on Long Island, that was a basic industry. The jets were sold either all over the world or to Washington, D.C., and it created employment on Long Island. A retail store typically doesn't bring wealth to Long Island. It redistributes the wealth that's here. That's not to say that it's bad, but it doesn't bring wealth in. So these are the areas in town where most of the wealth is brought into Smithtown anyway. One of the other things that we came up with is if you look at the amount of vacant land zoned industry, we found that there's not a lot of demand for industrial space outside of the industrial park. So if you look at the light industrial zone, out of the industrial park, 32% of it is vacant and 2% is used for dwellings. In the industrial park, only 7% is vacant. In heavy industry, interestingly enough, amazingly, 45% is vacant, but because of the acreage, it's way down there. The tertiary sector, the not manufacturing, but wholesale, retail, services, things like that, Those employment locations are indicated on this map. One of the conclusions that we came to based on the information that we studied is Smithtown has more retail zoned land than there is demand for. And if you look at this little chart, it shows that Smithtown has more retail square feet per household than the other towns in western Suffolk and then in Suffolk as a whole. And it also had more growth. So like those are good things. However, I think realistically it means that the current position is precarious. To have grown more than the other towns and to have more than our share of retail than the other towns, I think means it's vulnerable for competition in other towns.
Are you suggesting that our master plan is going to discourage further retail in favor of other uses?
Well, I think that there's probably a better way to word that, but yes.
Okay.
Okay, we studied land use, the fourth area that we did a base study, we did base studies on. This is a comparison of land use from the original comprehensive plan to the current time. The colors on the screen are not the same as the colors on a computer screen. The biggest part of the pie on the right-hand side represents residential land use. Normally it's depicted as yellow. There are unwritten rules among the planners in the United States that yellow usually means residence, retail means red. Red means retail, purple means industry, green means parks, blue means institutional, things like that. But in any event, if you look at 1958, of all of the land that was used, this much was used for residence. But if you come today, you can see a bigger piece of the pie is used for residence. The big difference between then and today is this was agriculture, a pretty significant part of the pie, roughly 1/8. Agriculture today is so small, it's over here, you can't see it, right in there. So this agriculture disappeared. Residents got much bigger. Interestingly enough, from a proportion standpoint, retail also got bigger. And a part that baffles me is industry got smaller, which is hard to reconcile when almost all of the industrial park was created after the original master plan, the Hauppauge Industrial Park. If you look, parkland is about the same, and institutional is somewhat smaller. This has to do with the closing of this Kings Park State Hospital. So that closed, so the blue segment got smaller. So that just shows like a then and now scenario. This is a land use map. It's complicated in a way, but you could imagine that green is parkland and open space. We'll go through these separately. The yellows are residential, and it doesn't show up well on the screen, but normally the darker the yellow, the higher the density. The light purples, the very faint purples, are warehouse and light industry. The reds, which got very dark, are retail. This is the Smith Haven Mall. This is downtown Smithtown in here. This is the Mayfair Shopping Center, the Target Shopping Center, Macy's, and down here is the Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's area. So anyway, this pattern, you can see that things are scattered and fragmented. It's not like everything is lumped in one place. If you're looking at only if you're looking at only the residential component and you look at the acres, low density is this much, medium density is this much, high density, and then two-family and multifamily. What I couldn't find a graph of, which is another one that we should have done, if you did it based on the number of units and not how much acreage they would take up, you would find that low density is way low. Medium density is about here. High density is way up there. and the two family is about there, and the multi is a little somewhat higher. So it's interesting whether you're looking at acres or dwellings. Here's the residential on its own. Again, with the projection on the screen, it's very hard to tell the differences, but the very dark things are multifamily. Again, you can see that there's no concentration of multifamily in the town. It's pretty scattered. Low density stands out pretty easily. That's up here in Fort Salonga, over by Oakside Drive, near the Nisququogue River, near Old Willets Path, near Blydenburg County Park.
How are you defining multifamily?
More than 2 dwellings. So it's either apartments or condos. In the town of Smithtown, and like most of Long Island, we don't have land use patterns like New England where you might find 3 and 4 family homes. They're very uncommon. Once you get denser than, say, 2 families in a dwelling unit, they tend to run 8, 10, 15, something like that. From a retail standpoint, we mapped the radii of service areas for the different kinds of business districts in town. There are 2 regional ones, the Smith Haven Mall, and their territory goes out to this line here, and the Costco area where the Western Costco, the Walmart, they start here and their territory goes over this way. And then there are central business districts, we call them, Kings Park, Smithtown, St. James. Normally planners use about 1.5 miles for those. And along those are the shopping centers, very similar, on Jericho Turnpike, Route 111. Similar in magnitude, 1.5 mile service areas. And then the neighborhood business districts. You can see where they are. You can look perhaps and say, gee, there's a gap here or there's a gap there. But it shows also overlaps. And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes in this. These are the business uses mapped, not conceptually, but actually where they are. So you can see it's Jericho Turnpike, Main Street, Smithtown, Middle Country Road, Terry Road to Smithtown Boulevard. What's interesting is the bypass has very little business. It has a little strip in here, a little strip by Mount Pleasant Boulevard. Mount Pleasant, and Route 111. Lake Avenue up in here, 25A, Indian Head Road over there. Interestingly enough, the golf driving range in Kings Park comes in here, so it's not a shopping center, but it got categorized that. The industrial uses, looking at only the industrial uses, the heavy industry is over here, Old Northport Road from Lawrence Road to Town Line Road, and then a little bit in the Montclair Avenue area. And the Hop Hog Industrial Park is mostly light industry. This is where Forest Labs was. Before that, well, at least when I was a kid, it was Lilly Tulip Cup. That's who built it. Open space. You can see that most of the open space is on the west side of town. Sunken Meadow State Park, Nisququogue River State Park, the Smithtown Landing Country Club and Arthur Kunz Park, County Park, the various county greenbelt pieces, Caleb Smith State Park, Blydenburg, Greengate or William Richards Park. And this right here is part of the Long Island Greenbelt. And as you can see, the Greenbelt is not continuous. It has gaps in it. Over here, these open spaces are the result of cluster subdivisions along Indian Head Road. And the same thing over here near Edgewood Avenue, which is here, and River Road, which is there. So this is Hoyt Farm. And then I'm not sure why part of it didn't get colored in. This is an error, but this is Lake Ronkonkoma County Park over there. Vacant land. I thought you might be interested in where's the vacant land in town. As you can see, it's very fragmented. Most of the vacant pieces are very small. But you can't say that, gee, the east side or the south side of the town is where all of the vacant land is. Then the next category that we studied was transportation. Before zooming in and looking at the town itself, we look at the regional context, that the roads in Smithtown don't end at our borders, but they're really part of a bigger system, at least the larger roads. So here's the town of Smithtown, right in the middle of Long Island. As you can see, hard to tell the colors on this, but these are green and these are red. The green are the parkways, which go east from New York City and basically end about as far east as Smithtown, at Vets Highway over here, and Heckscher Park down in here, Sunken Meadow Parkway up there. And then the red are the limited access roads that allow trucks. This one's the Long Island Expressway, which just cuts through the corner of our town by Crooked Hill Road. And this is Sunrise Highway, which is limited access from about Bayshore East. I'm not sure exactly right now, but Bayshore to the Shinnecock Canal. As we zoom in, we look at engineers and planners tend to classify highways based on what their function is. So this is a map depicting that. Of limited access highways are the biggest, then primary arterials and secondary and so on. Jurisdiction, these thick ones are state. These ones are county, Indian Head Road, Pulaski, Town Line Road, or Comac Road actually over there, Motor Parkway, Town Line Road and Hop Smithtown Boulevard, Terry Road, and Rosevale Avenue. What's not depicted are roads that the county has in their map, but the town maintains, like Edgewood and Maple Avenue and a couple of others, Nichols. Now this is a map that shows basically the capacity based on the design of the roads. One of the things that may be obvious in this is the southwest corner of town is where they're loaded up. That's where most of the capacity is. The limited access roads are these divided. The bypass is divided, but not limited access, and then there are 3 to 4 lane roads. This is traffic volume. You can see the volume also, for the most part, is concentrated, in the southwest part of the town. The thicker the line, the more traffic volume. So you can see the expressway is the thickest, the Sagticos is pretty thick, the Sunken Meadow thins out at Jericho and thins out again at Pulaski. Look at Comac Road here, quite thick. Vets, very thick, thicker than the Northern State. So presumably we've got Vets and the Northern State feeding this and making it thicker through here. But then it thins out as it becomes Nesconset Highway. Not by much. Certainly it's more volume than Middle Country Road. What's a little interesting here is you see more traffic volume on Edgewood than 25A on the east side of Smithtown. What we see, I think, is a fair amount of traffic that takes 25A to Edgewood, to Main Street, to Jericho, to Old Willets to get to their work destinations. This is a map of congested areas. It's a little hard to quantify. We did have some quantified data from the state. Some of it didn't make sense. Some things seem to be missing. So subjectively, we tweaked it and said, as a staff, we kind of voted on it and say, like, we think these are where the worst congested areas are. Thank you, Alex. In addition to regular highway stuff, we studied bus routes. These areas shaded in are the parts of town that are within a 5-minute walk of a bus route. As you can see, most of the town is not within a 5-minute walk. These are the areas shaded in within a 10-minute walk of a railroad station. Again, you see that only a small portion of the town is. Not everybody walks to it. I mean, walking is not the end-all of transportation, but in general, the more walking that can be encouraged, the less congestion there is, the less energy consumption, the less air pollution. We studied sidewalks. We looked at truck routes and truck traffic. The little thin lines are where trucks are excluded. So by default, the thick green lines are where trucks go. There are a lot of truck exclusions around town. We looked at bicycling. There's a large segment, or there is a segment in the United States that thinks that bicycling is an underutilized form of transportation. It's a little tough in the winter and days like today in the Northeast to expect people to bicycle as easily as they might in Florida. But we looked at it, the thick dark lines. What we found, by the way, is most of the town is very good for bicycling. But what we found, the thick red lines are where there's not enough lane width or there's some form of hazard for biking. We looked at, one of the other things is that there are an asset, at least in our opinion, is we have a fair number of roads that are scenic. And the parkways should have been shaded in on this. But there are some other roads that, for lack of a better term, we called rural. They help create the town's character. They help the town's, the value of property in the town by creating that character. Just like the villages of Head of the Harbor and Nissaquag sort of take pride in their rural roads. It creates ambiance, and that helps create value. The last study that we did was community facilities. We looked at parkland. This is ownership. The olive is state. The olive green is county. And then the darkest color is town. We looked at the percent of land in the town used by the town for parkland. And we found that Smithtown is sort of toward the top, but not the highest in terms of what percent of town land is used by the town for parkland, but just under 4%, and Huntington is just over 4%. This is a little interesting. In the original master plan, the original comprehensive plan, was based on what the planners called the neighborhood unit concept, where a community is broken up into neighborhoods as the basic social building block of the town, where people identify where do you come from, what neighborhood do you live in. And the planners in the 50s identified a number of neighborhoods and said, based on generally accepted principles, that every neighborhood should have a neighborhood playground and or a neighborhood school. So in 1975, which was sort of the peak of enrollment, of school enrollment in the town of Smithtown, this shows the parts of town that were within a half-mile walk of a school or town playground, and you didn't have to cross a main road or a railroad to get there. So everything that's colored in is within a half mile of a playground. The blue, or purple as it shows up here, is within a half mile of a school playground, and the green is within a town playground. If we jump ahead to today, we see this. Oops. Look at back then, today. So one playground got added. That's at the Armory. There should be two. Oops, wrong way. No. Well, one got added at the Armory, but if you look back, there were many more schools open then than there are today, many more school playgrounds. So we jump ahead, we lose some. So one of those things that happens sort of slowly, there wasn't one day we woke up and all of a sudden there were fewer playgrounds, but it happened slowly, people get used to it. We looked at trails and paths. The state outdoor, the comprehensive recreation plan has done studies every few years that shows that on Long Island, the future recreation is more and more walking and hiking. So one of the things we looked at were trails. We looked at switching from recreation to schools. Here are schools that were open in 2007 or dark. The circles are ones that were closed but still used for something. And the X's are schools that were demolished, razed. We studied a lot of things about the schools. As you know, the town has very little jurisdiction about schools, but still it's good to plan to try to figure out, for other reasons, what schools exist, what ones will be open or should be open or something like that. And we did it for middle schools, elementary schools, high schools. This map happens to show elementary schools as of today. Where are they, and a half-mile radius around them. we drew the school district boundaries to depict, like, some people might be within a half mile of a school, but they're in the wrong district, so they're not going to walk there. They won't even bus there. So we did maps like this, and we did studies like that. We did the same thing with fire departments, again, not under the town's jurisdiction, but as you can see here, very few parts of the town are not in a good radius of a fire station. There's a fair amount of overlap, so it seems as though there won't be more fire stations in the future. We did talk to the commissioners in the Kings Park Fire District to see if they had plans to build one in Fort Salonga. You can see the biggest white gap. They didn't. We looked at public water supply, something that on Long Island most of us take for granted, but it doesn't exist everywhere. Everything that's shaded in is either in a water district or within 500 feet of water mains. So you can kind of see the little white gaps here and there. The biggest ones are in the state parks and county parks. We looked at sewage treatment facilities. As you can see in white, most of the town is not sewered. The Hauppauge Industrial Park is in the process, a lot of it was sewered. It's in the process of being completely sewered in a sewer district. These lines indicate sewer mains. There's a sewage treatment plant here, and the sewage from a condo complex behind the Friendlies on Jericho Turnpike pumps to the condos on Vets Highway by the post office, and that goes to the 4th Precinct area. And there's a sewage treatment plant between San Remo and what used to be the Kings Park State Hospital. That has a pipe that goes out into Long Island Sound where the effluent goes, the discharge goes, and pipes to it. There's only one district over here in Kings Park, but other places that are not in the district pipe to it. There are senior citizen housing and condo projects in this part of Kings Park that pipe up this way. There's a condo project here that pipes up that way. This is St. Catherine's and the Avalon assisted living, the Avalon Nursing Home. Places like Hidden Ponds has their own treatment plant. Same thing over here, although the county, I believe, is in the process of trying to take it over. That's the Galleria by Terry Road and the bypass. Smith Haven Mall has a plant. Fairfield is a county district, so on. But in any event, the short of it is most of the town is not sewered. And I'm sure you've heard that there are articles in the paper every month or two about the notion of sewering downtown Smithtown or downtown Kings Park. And then sometimes people say that more should be sewered. One of the other community facilities we looked at was drainage. And the drainage systems, there are drainage systems virtually everywhere, but they're usually very small, taking in only a couple of acres each. But what this shows, the areas that are shaded in most likely drain to the Nisququogue River or a surface water like Lake Ronkonkoma down here. The white areas go only to recharge basins, or sumps as we call them. So out in this area, the drainage goes to recharge basins, and more or less in these areas, the drainage tends to go to the river or its tributaries or some pond or the Lake Ronkonkoma. I know of exceptions to the rule all throughout this area, but we got this from the town engineering department. And that concludes my presentation. Appreciate your
Thank you very much.
attentiveness.
Thank you very much
If you
for
have any
a
questions, you're
very
welcome.
nice presentation and the effort that you obviously put into it. Was
Thank you.
very interesting.
I have one question, and you touched briefly on scenic roadways, rural roadways. What about scenic easements? Are they noted anywhere in the plan?
It's a good point. We have, at the request of the Conservation Board, about 15 years ago, tried to map all the scenic easements. We never could finish it because they're roughly 36,000 parcels, and no one ever kept a catalog. So to try to go through 36,000 parcels and look for scenic easements, we made headway. And we do have a file on it, but we didn't.
Now, I assume that the two major ones would be Landing Avenue and 25A?
Oh, not where they intersect, but
Yeah,
Oh, all right,
you know,
okay.
the areas.
correct. In the upcoming plan, our recommendations, we recommend that the town have a policy of retaining those scenic areas.
Okay,
You know,
that was my
like the
next
valleys,
question.
the wooded valleys.
How are you defining rural road?
That's a good question. It's based on the adjoining land use and the character of the roadway itself, whether or not it's curbed, whether or not it has sidewalks, whether or not it has, whether it looks like an area that's undeveloped. Like if you look at this photograph here, that's Old Dock Road on the left, barely visible. That's one that we call the rural road. There are some curbed roads that seem rural because basically they're woods along the side. If the population density was low enough that it seemed to be more rural than suburban, we put that in as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it. Then probably just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
You have the performance bond, you're going to do that at the end?
It's already been done.
Very good. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none? So adjourned.